Good.
What's up, everybody? Nick Harris, Forward Star Telegram, John Owning of PFF. The Dallas Cowboys have a new defensive coordinator. We're coming into this show on a rare mid-afternoon breaking news segment. The Dallas Cowboys have hired Christian Parker as their new defensive coordinator. The passing game coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles is where he's coming from. Highly respected around the league, and his resume backs it up. We'll talk more about that. But first off, John, your initial reactions here.
Woo! I'm hyped. I mean, you guys know, everybody who's listening to this know I was a big Jen Leonard fan, but I always maintained throughout the process that Christian Parker was like a 1B, maybe slightly under number 2 option for the Cowboys. I am ecstatic. Everything you read about him, everybody who I've ever talked to, who has had a conversation with him, who has been coached by him, who has coached with him, who has worked with him, has nothing but talks about him in nothing but glowing terms. Just a fantastic worker, fantastic teacher, communicator, incredibly smart, really good memory, takes meticulous notes, runs a cutting-edge scheme, a scheme that the Cowboys have had a ton of trouble in. And maybe, Nick, this is pretty crazy. I know this is wild, but maybe the Cowboys can finally slow down a team from the Shanahan tree in offense. Maybe.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that. What gives you confidence?
Let's go.
I saw you tweet that. What gives you confidence there?
Just the fact that the Fangio tree has been the most successful in defending the Shanahan offensive tree over the last half decade. And the way that they disguise their defense, the way that they employ their defenses have just been the ones that give Shanahan and the LaFleurs and the McDaniels is just the most trouble. For later this offseason, me and Nick have to discuss this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Later this offseason, when we get into the slow times in the summer, my plan is so that we can go through a full 101, 201 of the Parker Fangio scheme, how it works, how it's constructed, the types of fronts, coverages they use, player types, player prototypes, all of that stuff. But from just a basic, very, very basic point of view, they routinely start in the same looks from a coverage perspective, from a shelf perspective on defense, and that's with 2 high safeties and with 2 cornerbacks that are in kind of a squat alignment, which is 3 to 5 yards off. And then they rotate post snap to either their single high coverages or they stay with their split safety coverages. But another thing you'll notice about the split safeties is they line them pretty deep. And the reason is Fangio has a very good explanation. It's that defensive players are much better moving forward than they are moving backwards. So if you align, say, in a single high with 1 safety deep, 1 safety in the box, but then you want to rotate to 2 high post snap, that means a safety has to be moving backwards. And if that's a run play, he's moving backwards and then forwards to his run fit. Yeah. So it's all about making it streamlined, making it, things better for basically putting your players in their best position to be as productive as possible. I know it's wild coming off a flu system. It's completely crazy that you can have a defensive scheming coordinator doing that, but that's exactly what they do. And then from a front perspective, they play a ton of 5-man fronts. You're going to hear terms like penny fronts, tight fronts, those type of things. So it's going to be very exciting. And I think especially from a front perspective, it's really lends itself to what the Cowboys have in their 3 interior defensive linemen that they can get them on the field all at the same time and really give opposing offensive lines a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I want to go through his resume really quick. You mentioned Vic Fangio, not only the 2 years of experience that he's had with him in Philadelphia these last 2 seasons, but also he comes from a 3-season stint with Denver. One of those years was with Vic Fangio. And then prior to that was an analyst with the Green Bay Packers. Mike Pettin was a big proponent of his and getting him to Green Bay. And I would have to imagine that Mike Pettin was one of the people that recommended Brian Schottenheimer to speak with Christian Parker and led this way.
And I have a good story about Mike Pettin and Christian Parker. When Christian Parker, I believe it was 2019, when he was a part of, the A&M staff or with Mike?
He was with Green Bay in 19, but he was with A&M in 17.
Okay, this was him coming to Green Bay in 19, why he came to Green Bay in 19 under Patine. And what happened was Patine was looking to hire 2 quality control assistants for the defensive side of the ball. He brought in 20 different potential candidates for that job. A lot of the brightest young minds in college and NFL. And from what he said in Zach Berman's profile on Christian Parker is that Parker was just by far the obvious choice to be one of those 2 people hired. And that was because of how well he was able to break down film, how well he was able to communicate schemes, teach schemes, and those type of things. I know Jordan Rodriguez talked a lot about how Christian Parker has helped teach her the Fangio scheme, and how, that's someone who's not even an NFL player, obviously a writer, extremely knowledgeable, but she doesn't have the in-depth knowledge of other NFL players. And he was able to teach her the ins and outs of the scheme extremely well, to the fact that she's been able to write, a half dozen of fantastic articles about the Fangio scheme over at The Athletic. So just love everything that you hear about Christian Parker. And this is a guy who, in every sense, he's someone who's going to be a future head coach. That's what I see all written all over him, to be honest. And Tony Gates, 9634, you are the fucking man.
Hey, Mr. Gates coming through. Appreciate it a ton. Thank you.
Is he related to Mr. Bill Gates with that?
Maybe. I think there is some relation there. The money shows it. The money shows. Can't hide the money. Who on the defense do you think this benefits the most? I'm going to give my take, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. For me, it's guys like Savone Revel or Kalen Carson. Going on Christian Parker's resume and seeing the type of guys that he's had, he has gotten the most out of every corner that he's had in his system. I think this benefits a guy like Savone Revel to no end.
100% Deron Bland as well. Obviously, you're going to think, first of all, the defensive backs, just because of Christian Parker's background. But like I said before, I really think this is going to help all three of the interior defensive linemen on the Cowboys. Kenny Clark, Oso Digizua, Big Quinnen Williams, even Solomon Thomas from a little bit. The ability to be able to put those three on the field at the same time and create one-on-one blocking matchups for each of them is going to allow their production, in my opinion, to go through the roof. And I think that those type of penny and tight fronts are going to be exceedingly effective for this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I want to go through the timeline here, just kind of the context of what's kind of led into this decision. So this week, 3 in-person interviews. Durante Jones was on Monday. Jonathan Gannon was on Tuesday, and then Christian Parker on Wednesday. I was having to get my days right. Monday, Durante Jones really surprised them, or not necessarily surprised them. I think the surprise kind of came the first time around when they spoke to him in the virtual. This time, he really backed it up, was told that, efficient communicator, did really well in communicating what the Vikings defense did well this past season, specifically against the Cowboys, and kind of dictating what the Cowboys were doing offensively based on what the Vikings called defensively. Durante Jones was very close to landing this job too. So, understanding the confidence that they had coming out of that Durante Jones interview, I think should speak more confidence into the hire of Christian Parker, because those reviews were pretty glowing. Jonathan Gannon on Tuesday was told, hey, this guy is very smart. He understands defenses. He gets it. But can he connect with the players? And I don't think that they got that question answered in their interview process. And that was the big thing for Jonathan Gannon. He was a top 2 contender for this search from the very jump. Jonathan Gannon has a lot of supporters in Dallas, whether it be Brian Schottenheimer, Clayton Adams, or anyone else that has worked with him over the course of his career. And bringing him in, it was with the understanding that he was going to have a pretty damn good shot at landing this job, and certainly was ahead of a name like Christian Parker or Durante Jones. But I don't think he got that question answered to them. If he could connect with the players on just a personal basis, A, and then B, being able to communicate to these guys what he wants out of them. And I think looking back on the Matt Eberflus decision and what went wrong with Matt Eberflus over the course of the last season, that is the thing that they point to the most, is that, yes, they believed in him. They believed in what he was trying to preach, but he cannot get that communicated to the players. And when we are looking at week 15, week 16 film, John, and these guys are having communication issues on the field, that's probably a big reason why. And I think as it started to get further down with Jonathan Gannon, I think they realized that it would be very similar to hiring Matt Eberflus again from that perspective. Now, from a scheme perspective, I think there's more variance than what people are giving credit for as far as what he throws on the field and what he likes to run. But I don't think that there was supreme confidence in him being able to, hey, DeMarvion Overshown, hey, Quinnen Williams, hey, Kenny Clark, anybody, can I communicate this my way and it be, adhered to on the field in a specific way. And I don't think that he got that question answered. That was the big reason, I think, for Jonathan Gannon not landing this job. And then Christian Parker blew them out of the water yesterday. And there was already a lot of confidence coming out of his first interview. And if they're solidifying this less than 24 hours after him leaving the building, I think that kind of solidifies what they think of him. Now, Jim Leonhard, that's a question too. Why not wait on Jim Leonhard at least until Monday to see if the Broncos lose in the AFC Championship and they have an opportunity to speak with him? Jim Leonhard is going to be more of a recruitment than it is an interview, if that makes sense. The Green Bay Packers, the New York Giants, New York Jets, these are three teams that have already expressed interest in Jim Leonhard. It's going to be whichever one Jim Leonhard wants, not whoever wants Jim Leonhard, if that makes sense. And if you run that race and you play that game, you run the risk of losing Christian Parker, Durante Jones, some of these other guys to other jobs, and then you could be potentially left with shit in your hand, to be blunt. And so they took the bird in hand, no pun intended. And I think it's a really good one here in Christian Parker. Everything from coaching clinics to interviews that he's done. Everything that I think he is going to be able to bring to Dallas is going to be very, very interesting. The big questions I have early on, though, how is he going to build this scheme, and who are going to be the players that he relies on the most? He has bones of a defense. He has the Kenny Clark, the Quentin Williams, Osa Odighizuwa, DeMarvion Overshown, Duron Bland. How does he build around those guys? He has 2 first-round picks that are most likely going to be used on his side of the ball. Where does he prioritize those? What kind of players does he like? What skill sets, what type of physical traits match what he's trying to do, whether it be in the secondary or up front, regardless. Hey, up front, who's going to be the guy up front? Is it going to be Aaron Whitecotton kind of managing what it looks like from a front seven perspective, because Christian Parker's experience does come in the secondary. I would need to break it down and probably do a lot of research tonight as far as who could be on a Christian Parker staff. But are you with Aaron Whitecotton potentially being a run game coordinator / defensive line, pass rush specialist, whatever? And you're shaking your head. No, give me your reason why.
I just don't think that he necessarily fits exactly how the Cowboys are going to play their fronts coming up. With Aaron Whitecotton, almost all of your defensive players are playing shaded with an outside shade, whether that be the 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique, shaded on center, guard, and tackle. In Parker's scheme with the Titan penny fronts, you're going to be playing a lot of 4-eye. You're going to be playing 2-eye techniques. You're going to be playing there's going to be some, gap and a half stuff that you're going to have to do. It's a lot more of a varied scheme up front. And I just don't think that Whitecotton would be the guy. I think if Whitecotton stays on, that's one of those, shoddy, quote unquote, front office things that we really like this coach. We want to keep him to maintain, but I don't think he would be the best fit. My biggest questions, kind of going off what you were talking about with Christian Parker, my 2 biggest questions is, one, what kind of play caller is he? He's never had the joystick in his hand where he's choosing the play calls from play to play to play. There's one thing to have the bones of a really exciting system, but are you making the right play calls at the right times? What kind of tendencies are you going to have as a play caller when it gets to 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 12 or 2nd and 8? These type of different situations, low red zone, high red zone, middle of the field. What are going to be his tendencies? What kind of calls is he going to lean on? Is he going to be someone who leans on man coverage in really important situations? Is he going to be someone that plays more, these cover 6 and cover 8 split field coverages in big situations, those type of things? And the number 2 thing that I think is really big is how good of an evaluator is he across the defensive landscape? The Cowboys are going to give him, they're going to give him the tool, the ability to choose what he wants in the draft. We've already kind of know that the Cowboys are going to spend a lot of their draft capital.
I got you.
Louise, draft capital on defense. And how is he at evaluating college talent for the NFL? Obviously he's had a lot of success with the defensive backfield, but how does he evaluate linebackers, defensive linemen, those type of things? These are the type of things that can kind of rot what is a very good coach, a very good teacher. But if you're not helping bring in the talent, the necessary talent, it's not going to work no matter who you are. This defense isn't going to be able to improve to the points that we want if he's not good enough at evaluating talent and not good enough at calling the right plays at the right times. But I am very, very optimistic that he is the type of person that he's going to be more than sufficient in those areas.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot about what our questions are here whenever he's introduced in a press conference setting or whatever it may be over the course of the next week or so. Going to be fascinating to see what he brings to that conversation and what he brings toward building a defense. I mean, for a first-time coordinator, there's already adjustments and challenges that you're going to have, especially when you are having to man an entire side of the ball. And Shotty's an offensive head coach, that he's manning that side, and he's trusting Christian Parker to be on that defensive side and not have to pop into defensive meetings for 14 weeks out of the season and understand that things are being handled on that side of the ball to his likening. One thing I want to pivot to here: free agency. Two names I want to throw at you here, John. Eagles free agents: Nakobe Dean, Reed Blankenship.
Not my favorite names, to be honest, especially Blankenship. I think that he's had a really up and down kind of career thus far. So I'm not enthused by that name. I think Nakobe Dean has his warts as a smaller linebacker, but I do think he would be a massive upgrade over Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn in the second level of the Cowboys defense. It's funny right now. My mind is a little warped when it comes to linebackers. I'm just get me somebody better than those two, and then let's work from there. And I think that Nakobe Dean would be that kind of guy. But I honestly haven't done a big look at the free agency class as a whole, so I don't know how those names compared to who other people would be available. But the familiarity between Parker and those players definitely makes them people that I guarantee the Cowboys are going to consider.
Yeah, and another free agent to throw out there is Donovan Wilson, Cowboys free agent, obviously. Texas A&M grad, and his time at Texas A&M overlapped with Christian Parker. I wonder if that maybe plays a role into potentially the Cowboys wanting to bring back Donovan Wilson and how that plays itself into play. But overall, man, fascinating news today. And for the first time since 1989, the Cowboys have a first-time head coach and two first-time coordinators. So it's definitely a change of how things are being done around here. And excited to see what comes of it. Christian Parker has a really big task in front of him, not only with building out his staff and building what his scheme looks like, but also this draft. This is going to be a very important draft toward determining how successful that side of the ball is moving forward. He has two first-round picks that, as I mentioned earlier, you would assume would be used on his side of the ball. How much is he going to be playing into the scouting process? How much do they prioritize maybe more defensive backs, guys like Caleb Downs or Jermon McCoy or Mansour Delane over some guys in the front seven like Sonny Styles or CJ Allen? However that ends up playing out, I'm curious, because you look at the draft picks that the Eagles have made over the course of the last couple of years and how many that they have hit on in the secondary. You have to be looking at that if you're the Cowboys and some of these secondary targets in the draft. And
I do wonder from the Joneses, from kind of the executive suite point of view, I wonder if they were deciding to go with a defensive coordinator with a passing game, defensive backfield background, because they plan on making, drafting a edge defender and linebacker, or that's what their primary focus is early in the draft, because maybe improved coaching will improve the secondary and we'll get some improved talent in this front seven to improve us there. Obviously, I don't know anything. I'm just reading tea leaves.
Yeah.
I think that could potentially be something, but honestly, we're not going to know what's going to happen until the Cowboys are on the clock. Who knows who's going to be available? Maybe Caleb Downs fucking falls to number 12 for all we know.
Yeah.
So this is exciting times. A ton of different directions that can go. Obviously, free agency is going to come before the draft, and that's going to change a lot of things. So very, very, very excited about the direction we're going, and a lot of different avenues the Cowboys can go down.
Let's dive into some of these fan comments, and then we both got to bounce. We're in the middle of a work day here, but man, it's been great. Appreciate all the comments. If you have some, throw some in here. Like I mentioned earlier, and Drew Santana 96 lays out, if Parker can elevate Savone Revel's game even close to Surtain's or Quignon's, it's a great hire. Yeah, I think he's going to be able to get the most out of these corners, and that's what you need, because these corners are so ill developed from last season, or from 2023. Or excuse me, from 2024 to 2025, so ill-developed. And you would hope to be getting more out of guys like Revel, even Deron Bland when he's healthy, Kalen Carson, whoever they decide to bring in alongside those guys. You would hope for some more development there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Ceviche. Go ahead and educate the people here, John. Been looking up what tight and penny fronts are, and I fear I might just be illiterate.
So penny front is like kind of like a personnel package where it's like five men on the front and then one off ball linebacker. Typically, you see have spacing of four. The interior spacing is that one defensive lineman at a 4-eye, another one at a 0 or a shade, and then another one playing a 3 technique. Whereas a tight is a little bit more firm with a 2 4-eye techniques and a nose. And then you can play that with just a 4-man front or a 5-man front, depending on what the offense's personnel is. A lot of times you'll see teams with just their one open side defensive end while the Sam's off the line of scrimmage because he has to do some coverage responsibilities. But if they're in like, Big 12 personnel, 21 personnel, then you'll see the same 5-man front type of a look that can happen in a tight front. So they're very similar, but these are the types of fronts that Fangio ran a ton of in Philadelphia and Denver and Miami, all of his stops, and they're fronts that I expect Christian Parker is going to bring over here and be very big portions as well. That's the thing about the Fangio system is they play a lot of even and odd fronts, a lot of 4 and 5-man fronts. When they go to the 4-man fronts, you'll see what I'm excited for from a pass rush perspective is that the edge defenders are aligned very wide, almost in wide 9 techniques, and that just gives you really good pass rush angles to the pocket and applying pressure on the quarterback.
Solid Duck with a good question here, or a good point. With how young this guy is, I wonder how much say he will have in the draft room. So basically how this scouting department works and how it has worked over the last 10 to 15 years under Will McClay is they will go to Christian Parker sometime in the next couple of weeks, very soon. And they will be like, okay, what kind of corner do you like? Do you like corners who do this? Do you like corners who do that? Do you like corners who look like this, look like that? They'll do the same with linebackers, edge rushers, defensive tackles, safeties. They'll be like, okay, what's your evaluation of this team right now? What does this team need? This, that, and the third. And then they will go hunting for those type of guys so that when draft room is built and the draft day has arrived, the players that are on the board fit what Christian Parker is looking for at the end of the day. So his say is going to originate from the very jump. When they go to Senior Bowl next week, ideally they have a good idea of what Christian Parker is going to be looking for. These guys have already been scouting these guys for over a year now. Some of these guys 2 years, and they'll know right off the top of their head what kind of guys Christian Parker would be looking for. So the say will originate early on. Now, when it comes to, hey, this player or this player, and we have a minute and a half left on the clock to make a pick, yeah, that's probably where they defer to some experience in the room, possibly. Maybe Brian Schottenheimer makes that call. Who knows? But at the end of the day, Christian Parker is going to have a pretty good say from the jump on this. Hey, Ron, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Best on the beat. That's what we say. B.O.B., baby.
Appreciate it. And the Juan Castle, thanks for jumping on early with us as well, my guy. Tony Gates, potential assistant coach fit, specifically linebacker coach and run fit specialist to help with run defense. A little early for that one. But, John, you have one?
One potential name that I actually just got texted to me as we were starting is, I believe it is Covington from the Packers that we interviewed to be the defensive coordinator. Hafley runs a similar-ish kind of front system to what Fangio and Parker did, what he did in Green Bay with what they do in Philly. So I think that's a potential fit, especially with the Packers potentially hiring maybe a Jim Leonard or somebody else to be their defensive coordinator, and Covington's going to be without a job. Maybe you bring him over to be the defensive line, run game coordinator type for Parker.
Here, one from Comic Flick. Parker has a lot of energy and shoddy Pete Carroll vibes, so I think he can handle leading these teams. Yeah, and that's a big part of the interview process as well, as they wanted a culture fit. It's a big part of what this team is trying to build under Brian Schottenheimer. Forever DC, I like his comms and the digital records he keeps on all his plays and goes back and changes those that didn't work. That's dedication. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's probably that when you look at the preparation that he had for these interviews, it's a big reason why he's the choice and not a guy like Jonathan Gannon. The preparation really did take another step with Christian Parker. Does the Giants defensive line, I think he's talking about Charlie Bullen here, or Packers DL coach talking about DeMarcus Covington, they interviewed makes sense with Parker's scheme. You just laid out Covington. Do you know enough about Bullen to make that work?
I do not, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all good. We're going to have more on some of these assistant coach fits as the days kind of go by and we get an idea of who they could be targeting. But I mean, the ink hasn't even dried on the paper yet. We'll have a better idea here in the coming days. And also Senior Bowl next week. That's going to be a really big opportunity for this team to fill out their staff. If they can fly out, everyone stay safe in this ice storm, man. Let's see. Smalls HD. My team beat the Gannon allegations.
Shouts out to the Locked On Cowboys podcaster guys, Marcus and Landon. Great people. They commented. Fantastic people.
Let me find that one.
It's at the very end.
Chris Baller, Minka Fitzpatrick, an option via trade. Guessing former Fangio guys could be options. That's fascinating. And this team swung big at Minka Fitzpatrick at the trade deadline, but they had to spend that capital on Quinnen Williams, so that's where they used it. So it wouldn't be surprised if they maybe circle back here.
Mm-hmm. Could be. Would be nice. Minka can play.
Rob's World, does the Fangio scheme rely on coverage, or is there more pressure packages? Probably more pressure packages than the Eberflus scheme is probably what he's meaning here.
Sorry, say that again.
Does the Fangio scheme rely on coverage, or is there more pressure packages? And probably more pressure.
Definitely coverage first, fronts in accordance with the coverage. It's kind of a back to front structure defense rather than a front to back structure defense. So definitely more coverage, but there is a lot of pressure schemes. They only blitz at a 27% rate, but they run sim pressures, which is where you still only rush 4, but you're bringing a linebacker, dropping a defensive end in the coverage type thing, trying to take advantage of protection schemes, the voids and protection schemes. And they did that at like a 33% rate last year. So they're bringing some kind of pressure from the second level on almost half of their snaps.
Ceviche, do we have an estimate on when Parker's first press conference might be? No indication yet. I would think it might be late next week because everyone's going to the Cotton Bowl. Everyone's going to the Senior Bowl next week. And the ice storm is probably going to play a role in this. If I had to just guess off the top of my mind, next Thursday or next Friday, but that's purely a guess at this point. No word from Cowboys PR just yet.
There'll be a few scrums with Jerry, Steven, and Shoddy and
Mobile,
sure. And we'll get a lot of information there from that. That was always fun. Every time I went to Mobile, it was just walk in to get a soda, and then, oh, hey, there's Jerry, and there's the flock of Cowboys reporters going on. That was fun. But yeah.
Last one here, and thank you, Rye Bread, for the $10 donation. In this scheme, which is more important regarding pick 12 and 20, CB or cornerback or defensive end? If you had to pick, I say yes.
Yeah, yes. Both are extremely important, and that's why you saw the Eagles make the deal to get Jalen Phillips, because you got to have pass rush in this scheme. And obviously they used 2 back-to-back picks in one draft on cornerback. So both are exceedingly valuable. I would say edge just because of the lack of depth there, the lack of depth and personnel there. I would give that the slight edge, but make no mistake, both are exceedingly important.
I wonder how this team prioritizes free agency right now. Now that they know who their guy is, you need a veteran in that back end who can, help communicate and do some things. Is Malik Hooker that guy for them? Maybe, but there's going to be some fascinating conversations had. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason, and what a way to kick it off. Last thing, John, grade the higher. A+, B+, where are you at?
I will give it A just because I don't want to go against my word. Jim Leonard was my number 1, and that would have been the A+. So I don't want to act like he was my favorite guy from the beginning. No, he's always been like my second favorite guy from the beginning. So give him a, and 95% on your final. Fantastic score.
Yeah, I'd take that any day. We are not privy to what was discussed in the interviews and, the details and the nuances, because those interviews last 6, 7, 8 hours. And so, even when I ask people, hey, how'd the interview go? I can only get so much. But at the end of the day, if you're just looking at the resume, you look what he's done, his track record on paper, it's pretty damn strong. And it's up there with some of the best candidates, if not the best candidate in this search. I'd put Jim Leonard right up there with him. With the way Durante Jones was spoken about late in this process, I'd be putting Durante Jones up in kind of that echelon as well. There were some really fascinating candidates. I think they landed on a pretty damn good one. And considering the timing and considering that Jim Leonard might be trending toward Green Bay or one of those New York jobs, I think they got the hire right. And so I'm right there with you, John. A to A-. I would only maybe put an A- because, what is he going to do now that he has to build his scheme for the first time or build his play calling for the first time? That's going to be a challenge. So, but I would say this is they did their thing with this one. I think they did, John.
Also, shout out to my guy, High as the Cloud. He's
yes, absolutely. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
He's always showing love on Twitter as well. Fantastic human. Really appreciate the donation, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, High as the Cloud. Appreciate everybody that came in and hopped on. We have the most live viewers on this episode than any episode we've done. So appreciate everybody for tuning in here midday on the breaking news segment of the Dallas Cowboys hiring Christian Parker as a new defensive coordinator. That's all for this one at Cross Chop. We'll be back at some point next week. They got to build this staff, and we got to talk Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, all this stuff. John just keeps on rolling. Let's keep rocking and rolling here. But that's John Owning of PFF. I'm Nick Harris, 4-Star Telegram. Shout out to Caden Gates who set all this up for us, and we'll see you next time here on Cross Chop.